All right. Greetings. Welcome to Chapter 8, Week 8 lecture. Um, Today we are going to be focusing on minerals and water. There are a couple of assignments this week that go along with this particular activity. And this is going to be the final chapter for our second unit exam, which will be coming up next week. So hopefully you have been paying attention to your unit study guide and working on that periodically here throughout the course of the unit. I think that's all I have for announcements. I will be updating grades this week to turn in for midterms. So if you were running behind on any assignments, now would be a great time to get those turned in because Monday afternoon, I will be working on submitting midterm grades. They are due on Tuesday, so I will be working on those on Monday. All right, this lecture this week will be similar to what we did last week, where I will give you kind of an introduction to the topic, go over a little bit about water with you, and then basically there is a table posted on Blackboard that you can fill out with the important information on the pertinent minerals and stuff that you would need to know for the exam. So that's kind of how we're going to do things this week rather than me reading through fact information about the minerals to you. I will allow you to do that on your own, at your own pace, and so forth. And then the discussion board this week is watching a video on the water crisis. Since we do focus on water, this kind of is less nutrition and more I guess ecology a little bit and a little bit on environmentalism. So just to give you something to think about, since we are talking about water this week, access to fresh water and the sort of fight that is ongoing to ensure that we do have access to fresh water for all of our various needs. So it kind of marries a couple of important, I think, ideas with what we need nutrition-wise for water. All right, so why is water important? Well, your body is about 60% water. And all of our cells, there is water, and bathing all of our cells on the outside, there is water. So we are about 60% water. Our muscle tissue is 75% water, and even fat is up to 20% water. Without water, we die very, very quickly. After just a couple of days, 2 to 3 days, we would die without being able to consume any fresh water. So we definitely need water in our body. It is more important than even our macronutrients are. We can survive, weeks, maybe months without eating. We would go through our muscle and our fat stores in order to maintain ourselves during that time, but we could survive much longer without food than we could without water. So it's extremely important. All right. So our body, again, is mostly water, roughly 60%, between 52 and 60% water, 20-ish to 30-ish% fat, about 15%-ish protein, and then 5% minerals and other nutrients. So more than half of your body is made up of water. This shows you that we have water balanced between two fluid compartments. We have the intracellular fluid, which is the fluid inside of our cells, and the extracellular fluid, which is everything outside of our cells. So extracellular fluid consists of the fluid in blood or the blood plasma, and then the interstitial fluid, which is the fluid that surrounds our cells in our different tissues. So we have water inside and outside of our cells, again, roughly making up around 60% of your total body. What do we use water for? Well, it is super important as a solvent. So basically, all of our chemical reactions and things happen within a watery environment, again, either inside or outside of our cells. And water is important for that. It's important to dissolve a lot of the substances that are transported through our bodies. So it's a medium for the chemical reactions in our bodies. It helps to transport gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, hormones, vitamins and minerals. It helps to transport pretty much everything throughout the body. As part of the interstitial fluid, remember that's the fluid that's in our tissues, but outside of our cells, it helps us to transport waste from the cells back into the blood where we can take it places to get rid of it. Water helps us maintain body temperature. So water is very interesting in that it has a very high specific heat, which you don't really need to know that term, but it just means that water can absorb a lot of energy, a lot of heat without actually changing its own temperature very much. So it helps us to moderate and maintain our normal body temperature as part of sweat. It helps us cool our bodies when we get too hot. It serves as a lubricant for our joints, cushioning, part of our mucus, part of our saliva. It bathes our eyeballs. It's just incredibly important there. And again, it's protective cushioning for our organs, for developing fetus in the form of amniotic fluid, and as part of the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, it surrounds and protects our brain and our spinal cord. All right. As I said, as far as regulating your body temperature, sweat is kind of a big one. When we get too hot, the sweat glands in our skin start to produce extra sweat and secrete it onto the surface of our skin. How that helps us cool is that, again, water can absorb a whole lot of heat and energy without changing its own body temperature too much. So what's happening when we sweat is the heat from our body is getting absorbed into that sweat, and then as it evaporates off of our skin, it's taking that extra heat along with it. So it's what we call evaporative cooling. As the sweat evaporates, it's pulling a lot of heat out of our body along with it. All right. So as far as water balance, how do we maintain an appropriate amount of water in our bodies? Well, again, water in versus water out. You want those two things to be equal. So water consumed should be equal to the amount of water you're losing. And where we lose water is through our kidneys as urine, some through our intestines as part of our feces. The water that does not get absorbed stays in our feces and moves through the intestinal tract and out in the form of feces. The lungs, as we breathe, we are not just breathing straight up air. There is water vapor dissolved in that. So we are losing water as we breathe, and we lose water through our skin in the form of sweat. As far as that is concerned, we have what we call insensible water loss, which is essentially water loss that you don't notice as much. So it's through evaporation from the skin and when you exhale. And then we have sensible water loss, which is the water that we lose through urine, feces, and sweat. So when we're actively sweating, when we're sweating a lot, we notice that there is sweat on our skin. But the insensible part of that evaporation from the skin, is like we're always producing a little bit of sweat, but you might, not be able to touch your skin and feel that sweat on there or like know that you're actively sweating. But we're always producing like a little bit of sweat on the skin, and that is like, evaporating off of the skin. So we are always losing a little bit of water through evaporation from our skin. Then when we get really hot or we're exercising, and we sweat, and that's like the noticeable amount of sweat that becomes part of the sensible water loss. As far as where we get our water from, I think we often think we have to drink all of our water, but remember that cells, any type of cell, any living thing, has a lot of water in it. So when we eat food, we are also consuming water along with it. So again, water intake, we'll talk a little bit about what the actual recommendations are presently for water intake in a day. But here we're looking at, for water intake, you should be bringing in about 6.5 cups of water. And this is just to kind of maintain the water balance there. So what we're losing in a day, we should be taking in. So about 6.5 cups of beverages, and not just water, but coffee or tea, milk, any of that kind of stuff does count toward your fluid intake for the day. We get about 3 cups of it through food, and that's any kind of food is going to contain water, because any kind of food was at one point a living thing or part of a living thing, and will contain water. So fruits, veggies, even meat contains water. More before you cook it, but still there's water content after you cook the food. So anyway, we get fluid intake from our food, and then we get about a cup from metabolism. So water is a byproduct of cellular respiration, where when we take in nutrients and they go into our cells and they go through cellular respiration where we turn them into ATP, one of the byproducts of that is water. So about a cup per day of water that we are quote unquote producing or bringing in comes from cellular respiration or breaking down of nutrients to make ATP. Water output in a day, and this is again on average kind of a rough total, we get about 6 cups going out in the form of our urine from our kidneys, 3 cups from our skin and our lungs, about a cup of sweat per day, and then a half a cup through the intestines in the stool. So this one, I think everybody knows quite a lot about, that dehydration is bad for you. Dehydration results when we don't have enough water intake, or we have too much water loss. So when we're sick, doing like vomiting or having diarrhea, having a high fever, or using a diuretic medication, which causes you to produce more urine and get more fluid out of your body. Diuretics are supposed to be used therapeutically for people who are retaining water, but some other people use them inappropriately for other things, like cutting weight for wrestling, stuff like that. Yeah, again, you may be losing too much water, or you may not be taking in enough water. When you feel thirsty, you are already a little bit dehydrated. So how that works is your mouth gets a little bit dry due to the increased electrolyte concentration in the blood, makes your mouth feel a little cottony, a little dry, and there's less water available to make saliva. Your blood volume is going to decrease a little bit, and the, ion concentrations, especially sodium concentration, is going to increase in the blood. And when that happens, it goes to, there's a series of different things that happen. Your hypothalamus in your brain then will go like, oh, I am thirsty. I need to seek out water. But like I said, that thirst drive only comes in once you're at least a little bit dehydrated. So feeling thirsty, you're already behind the 8 ball a little bit. You need to, continually consume the beverages and the water and liquids throughout the day to avoid feeling thirst, because once you feel thirsty, you're already a little dehydrated. So you feel thirsty, so you go out and drink more or seek out fluid beverages. And then also it triggers a series of hormones and different reactions in the body that lead the kidneys to conserve water. They pull more water in from the urine and make a smaller amount of highly concentrated urine, and then fluid moves into our cells via osmosis. So that's kind of our body's reaction to a lack of fluid. All right, other ways you can tell is basically the cornerstone method that you want if you're going to go work out. What you want to do is weigh yourself before you work out and weigh yourself after you work out. And the amount of weight you have lost during that exercise is not fat weight that you've lost. What it is water weight that you have lost. So there's a formula. I think there's a certain amount of water that you should consume for every kilogram of body weight lost in exercise. It's like 24 ounces or something per kilogram that you want to consume to replace the water that you have lost during exercise. The other thing you can do is monitor your urine color, again, because the darker the urine, the more concentrated it is, which means the more fluid your kidneys are reabsorbing from the urine to maintain the water content in your tissues, in your body, in your blood, and in your tissues. So it goes on a scale from basically straw to amber. And the closer you are to straw, the better off you are, the lighter the urine, the better your hydration status. Now, that doesn't mean like go out and drink gallons and gallons of water, because that also has repercussions for your body, but you want to check your hydration status looking at the color of your urine. So if your urine is a bit darker, the 4 to 5 to 6 range in there, you want to consume a lot more fluids, and you probably want to consume some electrolytes along with that because you are quite dehydrated and need to replace fluids fairly quickly. If you get down to like an 8, the 7 to 8 range, you're in potentially pathological status there, and that's really, really bad. So you want to make sure that you're maintaining your fluid intake throughout the day to stay at the lighter colors of urine. All right, like I said, too much water is also not great for you. It can cause what we call hyponatremia. Hypo is not enough of something. Natria, natreme, or natria, it refers to sodium. Emia refers to in the blood. So it's a condition of too little sodium in the blood. For healthy individuals who consume a balanced diet, you probably are not going to consume an excessive amount of water, but there are people that have experienced water toxicity, which is where you drink so much water that your blood becomes too dilute and the sodium concentration is too low, and it can actually be deadly. You can die from acute water toxicity or water intoxication, it's sometimes called. So it's actually quite dangerous. There was several years ago, there was like a radio station that did this contest where they had people come and like try to drink a whole gallon of water as fast as possible. And someone ended up, I think, dying from that due to the hyponatremia that they experienced afterwards. So yeah, it is possible to consume too much water. It's hard to do. Most people are not going to do that. They're not going to chug an entire gallon of water in a really short period of time. You can drink a gallon of water over the course of a day, but you're drinking that over the course of, 10 to 12 hours probably, versus trying to chug it all in one go. So there's that. All right. So essentially, there's no set rule for how much water a person needs. It's all dependent on your physical activity, environmental factors. Is it really hot? Is it really humid? Your diet. Again, it's all going to be kind of dependent on you. But we have, a rough estimate for most people that kind of at least is a baseline to work from. And this is the recommendation based on reported total water intake of healthy Americans. I think we used to just hear that like 8 cups of water a day was what you wanted to consume, but not necessarily the case for everybody. So for men, we're talking those who are biologically male, who have larger bodies, more muscle, that kind of stuff, roughly 16 cups per day. And of that, you want to get about 13 cups from your beverages. And the other 3 cups then would come from the food that you're consuming. And for biological females, a little bit less muscle content and a little bit smaller bodied typically. So about 12 cups per day, and 9 cups of that should come from beverages. And again, physical activity increases the need because we are losing more water. This is a look at different food types there and their percentage of water by weight. So again, food is going to supply water content in our diets as well. All right, here's looking at as far as the fluid intake. Most of it should be from water, just plain old-fashioned water. 2 to 6 servings or 2 to 6 cups should come from water. If you're going to, if you like coffee or tea, you want to make sure you're not like adding a bunch of sugar to it. So it says unsweetened, or you can use the sugar-free alternative sweeteners for coffee or tea. So, 0 to 5 servings. You don't have to have any servings of coffee or tea if those aren't beverages that you choose. 0 to 2 servings of milk or soy milk. Again, soy milk has, some fortified stuff in it that's actually good for you, calcium and things like that. So that's why we say soy milk. It's also a decent source of protein, low fat and all that good stuff. And then diet drinks, sports drinks or juices, soft drinks, fruit drinks, things of that nature should be minimal throughout the day because they are higher in sugar and higher in calories. So, as far as, in meeting your fluid intake needs, without going over, the, I guess, sugar, cap, the added sugar cap that we don't, we want to consume as few calories from added sugar as we possibly can. So sticking to mostly water and unsweetened beverages, or if you're going to drink, soda, maybe drink a sugar-free soda or a 0 sugar soda. And try to keep that to a relative minimum as well, because the carbonation has effects on your bone density a little bit too. So, paying attention to all that good stuff. All right, so that's water. I'm going to give you a brief intro to minerals, what they are and why we need them. And then the rest of the chapter is going to be the, various different types of minerals that you can go through on your own. So minerals are things just like vitamins that we need in small quantities, but minerals are inorganic, which means they are not a carbon-based molecule like vitamins or any of that other stuff. Minerals, again, we need them in relatively small quantities, just like we need vitamins in relatively small quantities. Minerals can compete with one another for absorption. So they might use the same carriers to be absorbed into our bloodstream from the digestive tract. So you got to be like kind of careful of doing a balance there. So, for example, having too much zinc can reduce copper absorption, and both of those are minerals that we need in relatively small quantities, but we still need them. Other substances can bind minerals and, kind of prevent them from being absorbed very well. So the example here is that there are chemicals called oxalates in spinach that actually, there's a fair amount of calcium in spinach, but the oxalates in spinach kind of prevent some of the calcium from actually being absorbed. So bioavailability is a big thing with minerals. Here we have the various minerals. We have major minerals, which are needed in higher quantities daily by the body. And then we have trace minerals or micro minerals that we need in just very, very small quantities. For major minerals, it's more than 100 milligrams per day. For trace, it's less than 15 milligrams per day. So the ones that we need in higher quantities on this chart: calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chloride, and magnesium. We need in higher quantities. Sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, and sulfur, those all play a key role in fluid balance. So maintaining not only the appropriate amount of water in the body as a whole, but making sure that it is separated between intracellular and extracellular fluid compartments in an appropriate way. Calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium are important for hardening our bones and our teeth. So we need those in fairly high quantities. Calcium is also important for other stuff like nerve conduction and muscle contraction. So calcium's an especially important one as well. All right, trace minerals, things like iron and zinc, fluoride, things like that we need in really small quantities, but they're important for a number of things though. Iron is important for making hemoglobin. It's an important component of hemoglobin for our red blood cells. Fluoride we need, it protects our teeth, our enamel on our teeth. It lowers the risk of dental caries or cavities. So there's all kinds of things that these trace minerals do in our bodies. But again, overconsumption of any one of these minerals can lead to toxicity. So again, you want to consume only the recommended amount. You don't want to overconsume any particular mineral. So there's different types of symptoms for different toxicities. So like magnesium, for example, if you overconsume magnesium, can lead to GI upset, gassy, diarrhea type problems in the gastrointestinal tract. And again, if you are consuming a healthy, varied, balanced diet, you're not likely to be over-consuming any particular mineral either. It's when you take supplements, usually, that you run into the potential for toxicity. All right, so this shows you for our minerals what food groups would contain these various different types of minerals that we are concerned about you getting enough of, but not too much of. These are the major minerals at a glance. I'm going to kind of skip through that. And the trace minerals at a glance. Iodine is another one of our trace minerals or our micro minerals. Iodine we need in, again, very small quantities, only 150 micrograms a day. So that's a very small quantity, but it's an important component of thyroid hormone. If we don't have iodine, we don't produce enough thyroid hormone, and thyroid hormone is really important to the function of basically pretty much everything else in our bodies. It controls our metabolism and all kinds of things. So where actually most of us get enough enough iodine in our diets is just from table salt, because in the United States, we add iodine to table salt to ensure that people get adequate intake of iodine. So there you go. All right, that's where I'm going to end the lecture for today. Like I said, you can go through these various different minerals and kind of fill out your table just to get sort of the key points of each one without me reading everything to you. So yeah, that'll be it for this week as far as lecture is concerned. Like I said, make sure you're preparing for the exam, which will be next week in week 9. And if you need anything or have questions, feel free to send me an email.